My name is Jamie Cobes. I'm a tutor training and digital literacy project manager for Wisconsin Literacy. And every month I try to run this series called Digital Tools for Teaching. So this month I chose AI text leveling. I think there's a lot of interest, maybe a little hesitancy around AI. We're all sort of just getting started, but I thought that learning how to use AI to create reading material that meets our learners' needs was probably a nice way to maybe dip our toe into learning AI. If you wouldn't mind just sharing with me in the chat, what's your level of experience with AI? Do you use it all the time? Have you tried it, but you don't use it very frequently, or never tried it? Okay, so we have some dabblers. We have people who are using AI to make flashcards and compose emails in plain language, using AI to translate, generate language learning scripts and vocab. Great. All right, so wherever you are in your learning about AI, welcome. Here is what I've planned for us for this hour. I want to introduce 3 free AI tools that are you can use them specifically for leveling text. I'd like to talk about best practices for using AI, but I feel a little bit silly saying best. So I'm going to put quotation marks around that because, I myself am just getting started and we don't know what we don't know. So they are the current best practices for using AI. And then I'll do a live demo with these 3 tools and we'll generate an original text at a specific reading level. And then I'll show you how to adapt an existing text as well. At any time, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to unmute or just put them in the chat. So the purpose here, like I said, when we use AI for text leveling, you can use AI to adapt an existing text. So I have this text. It seems like it's not necessarily accessible for a learner. How do I adapt it so that that learner can read it? Or I'm teaching a lesson about this topic today and I need some reading material. I'm going to ask AI to generate a completely original text that my learner can read. And then finally, AI can also, in addition to generating the text, generate some supplemental teaching materials like a vocabulary list or like comprehension questions that go along with it. Could I get your participation in the chat? What are some kinds of texts that you have wanted to share with learners, but they aren't currently accessible to them that you might think maybe I could use AI for? So what kinds of texts do you want to share with learners, but they're not accessible right now? And that could include like what text right now are you translating? Because I saw some people are using AI for translation. And I have a very broad definition of text, so anything that learners need to read. News articles for mixed level classes. Used AI to create a menu when your student was learning about ordering at a restaurant. Awesome idea. Okay. And then the next question, if we were going to generate a completely original text, can you offer me some ideas for topics? Like what kinds of topics would you like your learners to read about? And I'll try to choose one of these topics for our demo. What kind of topics would you like your learners to read about? Current events. Cooking, gardening, childcare. Thank you. Shopping, giving directions, making an appointment. Biographies on interesting historical people. Great, thank you. All right, if you have other ideas, keep putting them in the chat. And I am going to move on. I will name these 3 AI tools, and then I'll do just a little comparison as to what they offer. So the first one is ChatGPT, and I know a lot of people are familiar with ChatGPT. It's currently in version 3.5 as the free version, and you can have a paid version. I think it's 4.0. So ChatGPT is just generative AI, and you can use it for lots of different reasons. Diffit and Magic School, the next 2 tools, are specifically built for educators. Diffit, I believe it's called that because it's short for differentiation. So you're differentiating materials so that they work for all types of learners. And then Magic School is a group of AI tools for educators, and they have a text leveling tool. So the first feature that I'll compare is that when you use these AI tools to adapt an existing text in ChatGPT, you just have to copy the existing text and then paste it into ChatGPT. In the free version, you are not allowed to upload a file. So just know that. When you use Diffit, you can either copy and paste a text. Let's say you found it on the internet, just copy paste into Diffit. You can add a URL, so a link. One of the cool features I think about Diffit is that that link can be a video, and it can create a text from that or adapt that into a text. You can upload a PDF, and with the free version, it limits you to a PDF that's 2,500 words or fewer. And then for Magic School, you can copy and paste a text, or you can upload a PDF. The next feature I'll compare is the reading level. So what do they offer in terms of adjusting that reading level? With ChatGPT, it's sort of very open-ended. You can prompt ChatGPT to create a text for you or to adapt a text with the desired reading level of your choice. With both Diffit and Magic School, because they are created for educators, you get very specific drop-down menu selections for the reading level. So Diffit's going to offer anywhere between 2nd to 11th grade and higher, but 2nd is the lowest it goes. Magic School uses the language pre-K through university levels, and each of those would be grade levels then. And then finally, when you ask these AI tools to create supplemental materials for you, with ChatGPT, you would just prompt it for a vocab list. Say, please give me a vocab list. You don't even have to say please if you don't want to. Or comprehension activities. The free version does not create images for you. With Diffit, when it creates a text for you, it gives you a choice of images to add to that text, and it will tell you the source of those images as well. And then it's automatically going to create a summary of the text for you, a vocab list, and questions, comprehension questions. Magic School is a little bit different. So there's separate tools for all of these tasks. So we'll use a text leveler to adjust a level. And then there's another tool called a vocab list generator, and then a text dependent question tool. It does not create images for you for your text. I will be, after this training, I will send out an email to everyone who registered with a handout, and this comparison matrix will be on it. But are there any questions right now? Okay. I do want to mention that as we are either prompting ChatGPT with a reading level or selecting a reading level for the other two tools, that reading level is not really an exact science. How accessible or how readable a text is determined by a couple of objective measures, like the number of words or the length of those words, and then the length and structure of sentences. But there are subjective measures as well that determine how accessible a text is. One of them, especially if you teach English learners, is use of figurative language. So sometimes those idioms, those idiomatic expressions do not translate. And so that makes a text more difficult to read. And also a student's prior knowledge. So what are they bringing to the text? As a parent, I know that when my child was learning to read, if it was a book about trucks and construction, he could read at a much higher level than if it was a book about a subject that he wasn't really familiar with. So those things get factored into the readability of a text. And you're going to see that even if you ask ChatGPT to produce something for you at a second grade level, it's going to look different than Diffit's version of a second grade level, or then Magic School's version of a second grade level. So you do have to sort of play around. Also, as people who work in adult education, we don't often use grade level as our reading level. So you might be more familiar with Lexile or NRS reading levels, or TABE, or college and career readiness standards, or CASAs. But you just need to know that ChatGPT might not be familiar with that lingo. So we do have to be a little bit flexible in the reading level that we're asking for. And I see a question in here, can a text be at a lower reading level but for adults? And Mary, I'm going to show you an example of sometimes ChatGPT can get very confused about that. So when I ask for a second grade reading level, it will often put in language that's meant for second graders, so for children. And so you do have to clarify and correct for that. A few best practices, or what we know as best practices right now as we're using AI. The first one, I would say, is a best practice for all technology that you're going to use in education, and it's goals before tools. So I am a person who sometimes can get blinded by shiny new objects and new tools. But the goal of AI as we're using it today is to make your planning more efficiently and ultimately to make learning more accessible for your student. If that's not happening when you're using AI, then it's just a cool tool. And you should probably leave it be and go back to your low-tech options of teaching, what you know works best. Okay. The second best practice, Magic School phrased it like this, and I really liked it, so I stole it. They call it an 80-20 approach. So you want to use AI as your starting point. It's going to do about 80% of the work for you, but you are still the expert and your judgment matters. So you don't just use whatever ChatGPT creates for you straight up without glancing at it first and making sure that it passes your judgment test. And one of the things that you need to add to it in that 20% is a check for bias and accuracy. AI currently doesn't know anything past 2021. So we need to look for accuracy that way. And sometimes it just straight up makes mistakes. Like I asked ChatGPT to create a story for me yesterday about an immigrant celebrating Ramadan in the United States. And it gave me a story and it said that the United States was a city. And so that is inaccurate, right? So you have to correct AI sometimes. And bias can come in many forms. For example, if you're using a paid version and you ask for images of people in a certain profession, a bias could look like it offering you only pictures of males in that profession or only pictures of white people in that profession. So we want to check for bias that way. Another form of bias I'll show you in just a minute is a bias of omission. So what AI leaves out of a text could also be a form of bias. The last best practice is to protect privacy, yours and your learners. Never include any personal details such as your student's name. And I tend to just lean towards being overly cautious right now with AI. So for example, if you don't yet have a ChatGPT account and you start one, it's going to prompt you to give some information about yourself that will help ChatGPT serve you better. You can skip that if you want, and I have. So I don't like to offer that much information to a tool that I'm still getting to know. And you also want to consider if you are asking it to adapt texts that aren't publicly available, you're kind of putting those texts out into the internet. And I don't know specifically with these 3 tools what their security measures are for that. So just lean towards being overly cautious at this point. Any questions, comments about that or anything so far? All right, and then the last best practice is when AI doesn't get it right, and this happens, right? It's your job to clarify and correct. So I have 2 examples that I'll give you of that. The first one is when I was practicing with these 3 tools, I asked it to create a text for me about Martin Luther King Jr. And so this one, it comes from ChatGPT. My prompt was create a text about Martin Luther King Jr., write it at a 2nd grade reading level, include quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. And so this was the text that I got. You can kind of tell with its wording choice, Martin Luther King was a special person, that ChatGPT tends to use some childlike language when it adapts a text. But as I read through this, I noticed that not once does it mention that Martin Luther King Jr. was an African-American man, which is kind of important to his story. So that was an opportunity for me to notice that bias of omission and then clarify and correct. So I did prompt ChatGPT then to include his identity as an African-American. And it does correct it. The other example of when I needed to clarify and correct, I wrote here, that time I stumped ChatGPT. So Mary, this gets back to your question. I was looking for particularly like a reading activity that was a fill in the blank about health. So I said, create a 4-sentence close activity with 4 blanks. Each answer should be 1 word. Completing the blank should require a reader to use context clues, make the sentences health related. So I got an output. It didn't give me the answers. So I was like, oops, I need those. Provide the answers. And then I asked it to change it to talk about medicine. And then right here, I said, could you adapt the activity for a second grade reading level? And this is what it got me. And I didn't like number 4. If you feel strange after taking medicine, ask a grown-up or your blank for help. Okay, that's clearly written for a child, not an adult who reads at a second grade level. So I prompted it, redo for an adult who reads at a second grade level. And ChatGPT gave me nothing. It spun and spun and spun, and I just had to close it down and come back to it the next day. And so I corrected it the next day. I said, redo for an adult who reads at a second grade level. Remove advice to ask a grown-up. The reader is a grown-up. Okay, and so you have to be very, very specific with your clarifications and your corrections. And so it did, and it removed grown-up. It didn't change a whole lot more. But I say this just to encourage you that you probably won't get exactly what you want on your first try, and that's okay. Another thing that I'll include in the follow-up email and the handout is a resource that World Ed created called the Open Prompt Book. So this was another experience that World Ed created where they gathered adult educators and they worked on how to use AI. And so one of the things that they recommend is following this role, action, context, example format when prompting ChatGPT. If you can include all of this information when you when you tell it what you want, you're going to get pretty good results. So you can see an example here of a role. You are an instructor in a community-based ESL program. What do you want it to do? Write a rhythm and blues song. What's the context? Since these are beginners, keep the language simple and straightforward with no idioms or figurative language. And then what's an example? Example, on the shelf, above, below, behind the can, prepositions show us where. Now we have a plan. So this is a really detailed prompt for ChatGPT. And I show it to you because it uses almost all of these role, action, context, example format, but you don't have to use all of them. And sometimes they sort of naturally fold into each other. My guess is if I had been a little bit better at prompting ChatGPT with a role, like you are an adult educator, and then I asked for a second grade reading level, maybe it would have avoided using the word grown up. I'm not sure. Here's another example of a prompt that comes from that open prompt book. And you can see it's just action and context, but within the action, we get like the format, write a 3-paragraph story at a reading level appropriate for an 8th grader about 2 skilled immigrants who have moved to the US. So just as a guide, these are things that you want to think about when prompting. I'd like to demo for you now these 3 tools and how they could generate a text for us. So I'm going to go back to your topic ideas. And let's vote. I'm going to give you 2 choices. Should we generate a text about making a doctor's appointment or about a famous person? And if you want it to be a famous person, put that in the chat. So here are your 2 choices: making a doctor's appointment or a biography about a famous person. Vote in the chat. Doctor's appointment is winning. Any other votes? Okay, we'll do doctor's appointment. You want to prompt with the format as well. since Magic School only offers informational text, I'm going to prompt with informative. But know that if you're going to use ChatGPT, this could be a little bit more open-ended. You could ask it for a narrative text, like a story. You could ask it for persuasive or argumentative text. You saw a couple slides ago that we asked it for a song, a rhythm and blues song. So just know that format is something you want to be specific about. I'm going to choose a second grade reading level because that's the lowest one of them goes. And so we'll just see what second grade reading level looks like across all three tools. And then for our purposes today, I will just ask it to create one paragraph. And then you do have options to ask it for features you want to include. So you saw with my Martin Luther King Jr. prompt that I asked for quotes. You can ask it to include specific vocabulary. You can ask it to make a bulleted list at some point. Are there any features we know we want to include in a text about making a doctor's appointment? So I'm going to write here in ChatGPT, you tutor adult ESL students. Ooh, I like these ideas in the chat. Okay, so reason for visit and available times, the symptoms of the patient. Make sure to include giving the reason for an appointment. Available times and symptoms of patient. Okay. To make a doctor appointment, first you need to know why you want to see the doctor. This could be because you feel sick, have a pain, or need a checkup. Next, you can call the doctor's office. The person who answers will ask you when you want to come in. They might have times available today or another day soon. When you talk to them, it's good to tell them about any symptoms you have. Symptoms are things like coughing, sneezing, or feeling tired. This helps the doctor know how to help you better. After you make the appointment, write down the date and time so you don't forget. Going to the doctor is important for staying healthy. Do we like it? Do we want to change anything? I might ask it to make it into a list instead of a paragraph because it seems like there are steps. So that is something I can do with ChatGPT. I agree, Mary. It does seem advanced for second grade. And that was sort of my reaction for all three of these tools. That second grade reading level seems really high. So you can ask it, a way to prompt is you could reduce the number of words. You could, if you're finding words that seem difficult, you could ask them to substitute a word for it. So that is a way that you can clarify. And with ChatGPT, you could ask it like to make it even easier to read because it does go lower than a second grade level. To create some supplemental materials with ChatGPT, it's pretty easy. You can just say, create a vocabulary list with 5 words from this text, include definitions. I can also ask it to make comprehension questions. Create 3 multiple choice comprehension. Include answers. So I get my comprehension questions. And I get my vocabulary list. That's a great prompt. So can I ask it to create a text in English with the same text in Spanish on the next line? Probably isn't exactly what you want, but oh, it's doing my questions instead. That look right for those of you that speak Spanish? I mean, not like right, but it is the text that it's translating. Yeah. Okay. So Mary, I might need to work a little bit on my prompt to get it to go English, Spanish, English, Spanish. The other thing that you can do, and eventually you'll have to do if you want this text and you're using a free ChatGPT, is you're just going to have to copy it and then paste it into a document that you share with students. The paid version, you can ask it ChatGPT to send you a Google Doc or send you a Microsoft Word doc. But here you'll just have to copy and paste. Let's move on to Diffit, and I'll show you how Diffit works with the same topic. So this is the first page that you get with Diffit. Get just right resources for literally anything, an article or a video, any text or excerpt. So I'm going to start with literally anything. And it does say be as specific as possible. How to make a doctor appointment, including, what was it, available times? And symptoms. Okay, so we'll choose a 2nd grade reading level. That's the lowest Diffit goes. Click generate resources. It is going to take just a second. We're so close. All right, here we go. So Diffit is the tool that does provide you automatically with images. If you don't like this image, they have other options here that you can scroll through on the right. You can choose that one. And then here is our text. I forgot to ask for just a paragraph, so it's a little bit longer. One thing I do like about Diffit is I can click on this show sources and I can list those when I generate a text as well. So do you know how to make a doctor appointment? It's important to know what to do. I will not read this whole text to you, but just so you get a sense of the tone. We have a first, before you book. Again, I think this seems quite difficult for 2nd graders. I do like that it specifically mentions things like online health portals like MyChart. And I'm not seeing anything that makes it seem like it's for children and not for adults at first glance. So I like that about it as well. Diffit will automatically give you a summary of the text. So this is an even more simplified version. It will give you key vocabulary words with definitions. These little green stars here say I can add vocab words, but this is a paid feature, just so you know. And then it automatically gives you multiple choice questions, short answer questions, and open-ended prompts. Yeah, I also like the summary. So even if you thought like second grade level was too hard, you could give students this first. All right, we'll do it with a third tool. I just want to show you Magic School's interface. So it does have a ton of different AI tools for educators. And so right now, today, I just put them in my favorites. These are what we would use in order to level text. So it can generate original informational text. You can use the text leveler to adapt existing texts. And then we're going to use text-dependent questions and vocabulary list generator for supplemental materials. So if I go to informational text, got my second grade level, literary nonfiction. I think I probably just want expository. I'm going to keep it at a paragraph. Okay. Here's our paragraph from Magic School. There we go with that grown up again. To make a doctor appointment, you can ask a grown up to help you call the doctor's office or go online to the clinic's office. Is there a way that I can edit that in Magic School? Okay, so that may have done the trick. When you need to see the doctor, you can call the doctor's office to make an appointment. They will ask you what is wrong, so be ready to tell them if you have a fever, a cough, or any other symptoms. So these are interesting. I haven't played around a whole lot with these, but there tend to be, when you generate text in Magic School, there tend to be questions here or further prompts, so you can get it to prompt or to generate even more for you if you like one of these prompts. There's also this actions button. None of these actions, except for the translate, are available with a free account. So, but I can translate it into lots of different languages. Let me know if you want me to check specifically on a language. And then, like I said, you would have to, if you wanted questions or vocabulary list for this text in Magic School, I would copy it. And then I would go to, let's do the vocabulary list generator. And I'm going to paste the text it created for me here so that it can generate the vocabulary words. Okay. Questions you have or anything else you want me to try out in the demo, or even comments?
Well, I'll share a funny little story. I tried to find an AI image generator and I just Googled it and found one through Acrobat. So I was playing around with it and I asked it to create an image of a man in a park reading a newspaper. And a couple funny things happened. First of all, each man had a huge smile on his face. And I thought, I don't know how much people actually smile when they read the newspaper.
Good point.
And there were mountains in the background of every picture. So then I asked it, and I was kind of testing it to see if it would know what I meant. And I said, make the park in Wisconsin. Nope, there were still mountains in the background. And then I said, add a squirrel. And in one of the pictures, it had the squirrel sitting right next to the man as if he was also reading the newspaper.
Oh my goodness.
It was just fun to play around with. I think it's still in the early stages of development.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I don't have as much experience with image generators, so I appreciate that. Other comments, questions? I did not show you how to adapt an existing text. If that's something you really would like to see, I can definitely go through that. It is fairly simple with Diffit and with Magic School. It's just a little paperclip icon and it asks you to attach a file. So it does have to be a PDF, and you can just upload that. Yeah, great question. So you do need to have an account for all three of those. You would create an account, ChatGPT, Diffit, and Magic School. Diffit and Magic School will tell you that you have a free trial period, but once your trial period is up, there is still a free version. So you do not need to upgrade as an educator. Other questions?
I know at Wisconsin Literacy, we've had some discussion about how where's the line with cheating and AI? And Jamie, I don't know if you have anything to add to this, but I don't think that the verdict is out yet on that.
No, and frankly, that's one of the reasons I chose text leveling and reading as our entry point into AI for this digital tools series, because I think the writing portion of it, like if you're asking students to write and you don't know if they're using AI, I think that is a very sticky area right now. And I think there's still probably some ethical questions when we think about generating text. And so one of the reasons I like Diffit and that it mentions sources is that you can say, like, this is how this text was created. These are the sources for it. So there are those ethical questions, but I do not have answers right now for that. Joel, I see your question here. Can you use Diffit with any video or URL or only YouTube? Let's check. This URL of an article, PDF, or YouTube video. I'm guessing just YouTube here because of this language. I'm happy to hear any other comments or questions. As you're thinking of them, I just want to give you a heads up for what's next. Typically, I tell you what next month's topic is, and we are going to take a break in April with this series, mostly because Wisconsin Literacy staff is launching our adult basic education tutor training during April. And we have a health summit as well. So busy month in April, but we will be returning with this series in May. And if you wouldn't mind, before you leave, I'm going to launch a poll just to see if you have any ideas for future topics for this series. You're not required to answer either of those questions, but you should see it on your screen right now. A digital tool I'd like to learn more about is, or you can answer two, or you can answer both of them. I'd like to know if there are digital tools for. And I will take your ideas into consideration and be back in May with a new digital tools for teaching workshop.